Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. And today we're going to have some updates. I mean, basically, updates, and a little bit of news. Yeah? So, buckle up. But before you buckle up, make sure you have your popcorn and your drink. A follower tell me they need to pack their blood pressure pills as well because the kind of things that are happening in this country that they didn't know about, that they're hearing here on Simon Says, it gonna raise their blood pressure. So those of you who know you're on blood pressure pills, hold it close. Okay? We take a quick break and come right back.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.
So some of the workers from the Excellence Farm that spoke up and spoke out about the treatment meted out to them by the owner of the farm, Minister of Health, Mr. Philip Telesford, member of the Cabinet of Grenada, was sent back home on the morning of Monday the 18th, that's Monday gone, November 2024. They were fired. I couldn't say given their working papers because they got none. On showing up, they were told that their services are no longer needed. And so they had to go back home. Some of these workers have not gotten their full salary for October as yet. So persons are supposed to, go home and wait and see, right? They were overworked, they were underpaid, or sometimes not paid or compensated fully for their months or fortnightly work. And they were not paid on time. Weeks later, as I mentioned last week, it was past the mid of the month, and they were just receiving their salaries, right? And not their full salary or the full amount they were supposed to receive at that period. And not a one-off. This thing happened monthly since I was told by one of the staff, since she joined, this was happening. And if you do so, speak out. You are victimized, and in this case, fired. That's happening under the management of a minister of government in this ruling NDC administration. No empathy for the struggling single mother with children who are still attending school, who have their children to feed. No conscience. I mean, I believe from what you've heard that he is right up there in the church, very religious, even being called a pastor, right? Lord help us, I have to say. If that is the type of leaders we have walking the halls of the ministerial complex. Grenadians, I am sorry, but it's time for a new mandate. I don't know how much longer we could continue along this land for. It's just overbearing now. Big news today, the NNP announced yesterday, the 20th of November, 2024, that their long-awaited convention will be held on the 15th of December, 2024. Now, I'm smiling because, all sorts of people who have no concerns within the NNP was calling for this this convention. Oh, they haven't had convention in what, 2 or 3 years, and the convention and the convention, and Dr. Mitchell keeping it back because he wanted to go back or he wanted to get out, and the talk's been on and on about the convention. Now that the date is being called, has been called rather, it's just all kind of stories coming out. They want to give who, and he don't want who, and or he just dragging along somebody, but he's going back to run, and it's just a couple of weeks away. So chill and wait and see what's the outcome, right? But no, it's just one thing after the other after the other. Even NDC supporters, that has nothing to do with you guys, really. What you have to do is to wait and see if you could pick yourself up from the ashes that you're in as a party and get ready for the next election. Because it's already looking like one term for you guys again. I ain't gonna be a part of that. This wrong. I could tell all you that. No, I ain't sticking around for that. Well, I haven't stuck around for that. I've been gone since 2018, right after the general elections. Now, Peter David, MP for the town of St. George, has expressed interest in contesting the leadership. He made no bones about that. Right after the elections, he came out with his bill, spoke to the leader of the opposition and the executive, as he said. I am just here quoting him, right? And which I'm sure is the truth. We also has Emmeline Pear, the PRO of the NNP at the moment, and somewhere along the line, well, Mrs. Pear has mentioned that she would only contest if Dr. Mitchell is not contesting, because she said she refused to go up against her political leader at the moment. Then somewhere along out there, we've heard the name Dwight Hosford. He's back in Grenada, returning from Angola as the Attorney General there, and his name has been called. I'm not sure if it's in the basket because you have not heard anything strongly about him putting himself up, or actually from him saying that he would contest. You've heard it from different quarters. I've heard Dr. Mitchell sent for him to come back to run because he didn't want Peter to run, and you know the rumors that's been out there. And but we yet to hear from Dwight Hosford himself as to if he planned on contesting for the leadership of the NNP. Now, I do believe, and I'm saying this genuinely with all my heart, that the sister would make a great leader. And I'm speaking here of Emmeline Pear. Now I'm a feminist. And in cases like these, I don't use my feminism, if that's a word. And I say this because I'm not supporting Emmeline Pear for leader because she's a female. No. I don't do that at all. If that was so, I would have supported Franca Bernardine for leadership up against Nazenberg. I support a woman, the woman, just because, in my opinion, I think she is the most capable one there. I believe that she has the competence and the experience to do so. I believe that this is her time. She is what we would still call young. And so even with her experience thus far, she has lots of room for development and improvement with the right persons surrounding her. And in my opinion, there's no point in putting in a leader that in the next election, you would have to change again, right? Because of age or whatever the reason. In my opinion, We're looking for continuance and growth and stability, right? Dwight Oswald is pretty young still, but as I said, I'm not seeing his name or hearing about him and coming from him that he is one of the contenders. So, uh, as of now, it seems as though if the leader of the opposition decides, and the leader of the new national party at the moment, Dr. Keith Mitchell, decides he's not running, then of course, Emmeline Bear would be on the list, on the slate. Well, after the screening and whatever they have that everybody have an issue with, when the NDC even screened for their candidates, they had screening, they had interviews, and all of that. And these are the same people, oh, what they're screening, that's not democracy. What's undemocratic about that? Wanting the right person to lead. And not just be a candidate, we're talking leadership here. NDC needed to screen Deacon Mitchell, or else they wouldn't be holding their head and ball now with the dictatorship leadership that they have here, the one-manism. And they were warned because he did say if he wasn't going to be the leader of the NDC, it was all or nothing. If he didn't get to be the leader, he's out. And so don't be surprised of his leadership role, the role he's playing in leadership. Don't be surprised because you all were warned, right? He said it. And some of you was there, you knew it, you heard him say it. I have been following for years, to continue, Emmeline Bear. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would say, hell no, I didn't think so. But I followed her even during the last campaign. And she was effective. She dealt with the issues. She was strong. She was one of the strongest candidates within the NP. And so, I'm not a member of the party. I can't vote. I wouldn't even be at their convention. But I want to go on record here and say, I support Emmeline Pear for leader of the NNP. That is if she is putting up herself eventually for the position. I say to all persons contesting, may the best man, quote unquote, win. And I want to back up a bit and talk about the NDC for a little bit, because we don't really have time to waste. And I realize NDC don't learn from their mistakes. In 2008 to 13, the entire executive of the NDC ended up in the halls of the ministerial complex in some kind of position. The ones that were ministers were ministers, but then we had them, the rest, as technocrats and advisors and you name it. And they let the party turn to ashes. And today we see the same thing happen. The GenSec is a technocrat. The PRO is technocrat, advisor, leader, you name it. Have you ever seen Mr. Orlando Remain on any screen speaking about the NDC party? No, but he too busy amassing. And the deputy PRO is the ambassador to the diaspora. And then he hosting the Heartbeat program. But even there, I guess he says nothing because he's not the PRO and probably he feel like he'd be overstepping because he did put himself up or wanted to, and he was told, nah, leave that for Orlando. You're going to be deputy and you would speak instead. But you would get the chance to speak. But this man, I know he's a smart man. He ain't going to just take that so in chuppity. You understand? So we have the leader of the NDC, Deacon Mitchell. I have never heard Deacon Mitchell speak in the capacity of leader of the NDC. Every time he speaks is as the prime minister and these days the chairman of CARICOM. But as leader of the NDC, no. The chairman of the NDC, Sylvester Quallis, he's on this board and that board. He's chairing the gravel and concrete board, and he's on the lottery authority board, and then he's ambassador now, or consul general, I'm not sure, in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. I don't know if he's there where he is, but he's the chairman of the NDC, right? And so they're all in there. They're greedy to describe the NDC people. So they have to be there. And if you see they didn't get these positions, they started to grumble. There are those who already started to grumble. So they get position in this statutory body, or they get it on the board, but they got to get something because it's about eating the food, right? And that is why they're in the ashes. The Prime Minister hosted a press briefing on Tuesday, November the 19th, 2024, together with Minister Andy Williams, the CTO of the Ministry of Infrastructure, Mr. Kevin Blash, a representative from NADMA, I'm repeating it as they said it on the flyer, a representative from NADMA, the acting general manager of NAWASA, Mr. Terrence Smith. I don't believe his name was there either, but he was at the press briefing. The main focus, to inform the nation of the agitated high seas on the West Coast and its impact, as well as future preparations in treating with these matters. I'll come to that in a bit, but first I want to address GIS. Now, the Prime Minister is the line minister in charge of GIS, information, the Minister of Information. And as I understand it, Mr. Orlando Romain is the person overall in charge, right? The person you go to when it comes to GIS, the go-to person. I believe he's called the coordinator. Now, on landing in the halls of the ministerial complex, hundreds of thousands of dollars was spent on new equipment for the GIS. Those of you who've been following their press conferences would find that hard to believe. New equipment, like the new trucks that Gravel and Concrete bought, that they had to get trailer to remove it from the port. And since then, been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on parts. But we got to deal with Gravel and Concrete separately. That's another time bomb ticking away, right? So, Mr. Romain, in charge of the GIS, they bought their new equipment. Yet for all, we can never get proper coverage from GIS in a press conference. It's either static, you can't even hear what the presenters are saying, or it gone down to Lawton until you can't hear nothing at all, they mute. I remember listening to a press conference where for a first maybe 15 minutes of the press conference, there was a recording being played. It was in the voice of Honorable Peter David. A recording being played from, it sounded like it was a parliament. He was in parliament. And that was coming over loudly. You were hearing that. You couldn't even hear the presenter at the press conference at the time. It's like probably they were using a tape that they were reusing, a tape with a recording of Peter David, MP Peter David, excuse me, and his voice was louder than the presenter, and you've been hearing that about 15 minutes into the whole and it was never dealt with. If you go back now and you click on that press conference, you would hear it. It was not even edited. But then again, as we understand it, the workers at the GIS are working on a real low moral, or none at all. None at all. They've been harassed by the Eggman that they brought in as the manager of GIS. These days he disappeared because the government been giving out chicken and he be more busy organizing his farm. So they get a little break from the bullying and the harassing of this individual that knows nothing about communication and media that they put to manage the GIS. Nepotism at its highest. Because during the campaign, every morning you would wake up to a live from him. And then he gave out truckloads of eggs. So maybe he's getting ready for Christmas. We might get truckloads of eggs. I live in the South and I want free eggs this rounds. I want free eggs, I'm sorry. And eggs will be scarce around Christmas time, huh? So put me on the list. And so you can tell when you see some of the workers even on screen that they're acting like they're afraid. If they mash egg, it wouldn't break. They're just so jumpy, you know? How can you work under such conditions? How can you put your workers through that kind of stress and mental health issues that they're going through, right? So, case in point, the last interview, the last press briefing done by the Prime Minister, right? On Tuesday, the 19th of November, 2024. This one was so bad, they had to stop, wheel and what is it, wheel and come again, the young people? They had to go off air and return in a few minutes and start over. Because when I tuned in, I couldn't hear anything. I was just seeing mouths moving at the beginning, right? Then you got a little volume, and then you got it nothing, and then it was just horrible coming from the government information service. What is the cause of this embarrassment? Now they showed up with 3 mics, 6 persons at the table, and 3 mics. One for the moderator, who is the press secretary, right? Then we had Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. We had the Minister of MIT, Andy Williams. We had the NADMA representative, who turned out to be the managing director or head coordinator, Dr. Terence Walters. Then we had the CTO of the Ministry of Infrastructure, Kevin Blash, and of course, the acting GM of NAWASA, Mr. Terence Smith, to use 2 mics, because 1 mic went to Ms. Neela ATM, because she is speaking the most. Well, you know, the mic, so mic for the moderator, and then the 2 mics between the 5 other persons, including the Prime Minister. Then 1 mic break down. So they end up with 1 mic. And imagine the Prime Minister hosting a press conference, and they have to take 1 mic from him to Mr. Terence Walters, from Mr. Terence Walters to Mr. Terence Smith, back to the CTO, back to 1 mic for 5 presenters coming from the GIS, the Government Information Service. Yeah? Something wrong with that picture. The press conference had to start over on its return. You decide, my friends. what is going on there at the GIS, even though they had received new equipment for their purposes. The Prime Minister returned home on the weekend of the 17th of November 2024, as was stated before, just a couple of days before he headed back out to Guyana to the second CARICOM India Summit from November the 20th, 2024. No amount of rain, thunder, lightning, thunderstorm, no amount of mudslides and floods, rivers bursting its bank, fallen trees, fallen electrical poles, fallen houses could keep him grounded. He got to go. Recently, on the Bob Report, when the Prime Minister was asked about his travels, this is what he had to say. And there's a method to my madness here, but take a listen.
Interrogating prime ministerial travel, sir, and integrity in public life. Now, had it not been for a question posed by a local journalist about your trip to Nigeria, the National Community Prime Minister might not have been aware of the true scope of the significance of that trip to the motherland, or that you appointed a chief of staff in the person of former magistrate Mr. Teddy St. Louis. Now, I'm using this anecdote, Prime Minister, to ask about your foreign trips, which you have attempted to justify on the Grenada Broadcasting Network. But the issue here is not so much about the foreign trips as it is about the size of the parties that travel with you, as well as a lack of voluntary accounting of the benefits of those trips to the national community. At least that is what the opposition has articulated, that you go on these trips, but when you return from these trips, that there is not a proper accounting as to the specific benefits or investment opportunities or other benefits that emerge from those travels. What say you, sir?
Well, I think we should be specific and not generalize. So I'll start with from July 1. Maybe that's a good opportunity since it's the last half of the year and we can take from on July 1. Let me go back a little. On the 30th of June, I traveled to Barbados for the Cricket World Cup. As you're aware, this event was being hosted by the Caribbean, the United States, and it's an international event. Cricket, obviously, I don't think I need to say the significant role that cricket plays in.
Your father plays cricket as well.
Yes, that event actually was a CARICOM event hosted by Prime Minister Mia Mottley, and it involved a number of other Caribbean leaders who were there: the President of Guyana, the Prime Minister of Antigua, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, etc. Coincidentally, the leader of His Majesty's opposition was also at the event. I would have traveled back to Grenada. We would have had Hurricane Beryl. Save for traveling to the Grenadian Islands to provide support to our colleague, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, I would not have traveled for the month of July and August, save for one other trip at all. So let's be clear, for July and August, I did not leave the state of Grenada except for visiting the Grenadian Islands and except for a solitary trip to Guyana. And this was a trade mission to Guyana, first of all, to express our solidarity and appreciation and gratitude for the tremendous support provided by the President of Guyana, the government and people of Guyana, the Guyana Defense Force, the private sector, who played a significant role in supporting Grenada in the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. We also traveled to Guyana as part of a trade mission. We are seeking to, and coming out of that meeting and that trade mission, we will have direct flights between Guyana and Grenada starting in December. So when we talk about what are the benefits of travel, I don't think there's anything that's more self-explanatory than that. A large contingent of Grenadian businessmen and women from all sectors, including agro-processing and small manufacturers, visited Guyana at that time. And I can tell you for sure that many of them who've had challenges as to potential markets and so on, see Guyana as an opportune, thriving, growing market to sell their products. I could give you one specific instance of a Grenadian small manufacturer who makes wipes and has had significant logistical difficulties in getting the wipes to Guyana. In fact, they go to Miami and then to Guyana. And coming out, I've been able to put her in contact with the head of the Guyana private sector.
Great achievement, big achievement. We have direct flights from from Guyana to Grenada and Grenada to Guyana. Great achievement. Huge. What you do? Huge. We in a bad way. We in a bad way. Now, quite selectively, the Prime Minister chose the last 6 months out of a 2.5-year stint in office, right? Because in that 6 months, he stayed on the ground for 2 months, kind of, because he did go to, as he said, to St. Vincent and he went to Carriacou a lot. So, and he used helicopter to go to Carriacou. So technically, he didn't stay on the ground for 2 months, but Carriacou is part of Grenada. Now, public records has shown that the ruling Deacon Mitchell-led administration spent more on international travels during its first 5 months in office. And remember, he's been saying there that when they do travel, he said that when they do travel, the persons inviting them are the ones who pay for their trip. Needless to say, they keep hiding the amount they spend on their trips. So far, if they were asked in the parliament by the opposition, and they are still waiting for an answer, it's not forthcoming. Why are you hiding if you have nothing to hide, right? It's as basic as that. So the NDC, I'm sorry, had spent on international travel during its first 5 months in office, July to November of 2022, a whooping $509,578.48. In comparison to the Dr. Mitchell-led administration, now in opposition, for an entire year, spent EC dollars 610,000. That is $610,348.41. Compliments Linda Straker. Now, almost the same amount, close enough, for 1 year to in a pause of 6 months. So reel and come again, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. Now, the Prime Minister, as I said, came home. It's just for, really in transit, but he had time to film a movie. You know how he's the only actor in the movie, we don't know. So he went to St. David's, his constituency, and by the way, things he can't answer for national, trust me, he can answer for St. David's. He was able to tell us that St. David's had 29 slides. I think 6 homes got damaged, 2 was totally destroyed or more or less destroyed. You know, he's up to date. He's up to date because he got to win the seat in St. David's. Even if none of y'all in the other constituency win your seat, he can go out saying, the people still like me. I won my seat. I am only out of office because the others couldn't win the seat. However, this is where I take my leave. So he managed to film a movie and held a press briefing, left us with Andy, and flew out. When asked about the drainage and the frequency or lack thereof of the debushes and environmental wardens. This is what Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell had to say.
Just to Minister Williams, you spoke about the national cleanup. This is my final question. Many have been saying that one of the issues is drainage and stuff around the country when it comes to the water filtrating out and illustrating towards the road gangs over the years who used to do that. They're no longer there as usual. Could you speak to that, and if that is something that is being considered rather than waiting for such an incident to happen and then we have to do a national cleanup, the maintenance?
Sorry, I'll respond to that and I'll answer you.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the premise of the question I don't think is factually accurate. The Ministry of Infrastructure maintains permanent crews of environmental wardens who throughout all of the districts are primarily responsible for cleaning drains and cleaning culverts. And that's an ongoing issue, as an ongoing, even currently right now. And then in addition to that, from time to time, you have persons who are engaged in the debushing, and that is ongoing as we speak. I think we have to be real with ourselves and not believe things that we imagine. The environmental wardens are not going to stop the kind of flooding and the kind of destruction that we're seeing when we get the kind of rainfall that we get and we face the kind of challenges that we face. And Mr. Smith talked about the state of the forest and the state of the hillside and whether or not, for example, we replanted in a systematic way, any of our vegetation since Hurricane Ivan. And he's talked about our watershed management system. I've talked about our practices in terms of the cutting of bamboos and large trees and leaving it in rivers and so on. And what happens? Mr. Blash has talked about the fact that everywhere we are building more and more concrete homes, and therefore the water has to go somewhere. We also have to accept that we are building in flood-prone areas. Right? I mean, I don't think there's any imagination that River Road is a flood-prone area because the St. John's River runs through it, and it's basically part of it is flat, and then you have the hillside surrounding it. So, since I've known myself as a child, and I think probably since Green has existed, River Road always floods. The question is it getting better or worse might be the issue. The Monrouge area, some of those areas are actually reclaimed land. It floods all the time. It probably is getting worse because of the erratic nature of the rainfall, and because in many instances we have more and more construction taking place in areas that were either previously agricultural or had a lot more vegetation. So yes, insofar as everything needs to work together and everyone has to contribute towards minimizing the impacts of what we're going through. Keeping our culverts clear, keeping our drains clear will certainly contribute. But the reality is with the level of rainfall that you experience, and in a year where you've had a hurricane, in a year where you've had a drought, which would have meant that the vegetation and so on would have been laid bare, and at the pace at which the water is running off now, there's very little that maintaining drains and so on can do. Most of the landslides have nothing to do with drains. Most of the damage that is happening is landsliding, which probably has to do with the fact that you either have too heavy vegetation or not enough vegetation, and so the water is soaking into the soil and therefore causing the soil to move dramatically. And in many instances for the homes and so on, the homes are being built on the hillside that is unstable. So I don't think, as I said, first the environmental wardens are there, and in fact their primary responsibility is to clean the drains and culverts and so on across the nation, and that is ongoing. But given the kind of damage we're seeing and the kind of flooding and the level of rainfall that we're experiencing, I think we have to do a lot more if we are going to be able to address mitigating some of the consequences of the floods and the heavy rainfalls.
By the time you finish talk, you're tired. You don't even want to come back. You don't know. Prime Minister, my dad, my deceased dad, may his soul rest in peace, had a thing he used to say: you could run, but you cannot hide. The fact is, we need magnifying glass to look for the wardens. Where are these wardens that has been consistently cleaning drains and culverts? Where are they? Where are the debushes? Where are they? The ones that you speak of. And to say that most of the damages were by landslide is not correct. We lost a life by a flooded river. We lost lives. And the rains came the weekend from the Friday. I think it was Friday the 8th. And the rivers, and so that was blocked with the same bamboos and the logs of wood that you speak of. They were not removed. The mud and bushes growing out of our drains on the side of the roads been there since July when Beryl came. I spoke on this program about the Tantine area right in your face. 5 months before it was cleaned, and still not properly cleaned. And while I'm at it, if you look on the opposite side of the road where they have the sidewalk in Tantine there, on the side of Tamsisi, the place full of bush, it became a bicycle track. 2 students cannot walk alongside each other. Half of the sidewalk is covered with bush. And so you have to walk separately along there, individually. It's a 1 lane for walking. Right there in Tantine, where every day, some of you have to traverse to get up to the ministerial complex. The whole country, dingy, dirty, bushy. I mean, well, God help us, because now that the rains have been falling and the flooding, when the water subsides, mud and sleet and just everything is just in the streets, on the sidewalks, on pavements, wherever the floods was. And we have to walk through that and, drive through that. Where are these environmental wardens that you speak of? I even forgot that we had environmental wardens. If you didn't say that, I wouldn't, and I'm speaking honestly here, did not remember that we had environmental wardens. Right there, as I said, in Tantine, a stone's throw away from the ministerial complex. And even 2 weeks after, or 3 weeks after I spoke of it, if some photos didn't go up in social media for people to actually see what Tantine looked like. And they're talking about huge trees, growing out of the drain, because they had so much mud in there that they grew out of the drain. And it was there for months. For months. I can speak of what I see in the areas that I traverse. The drain across from SOG. Bush is also growing out of there. It's muddy. Parts of the drain are at the level with the street. There's no drain, actually. The mud is right up. It's before a drizzle. It will flood. There's a business right across the street, a supermarket. The gentlemen out there have to have sandbags pile up now. And it's still like that. We had a few dry days, and that drain is still like that. So if rainfall now, SOG flood again. The rivers, the bamboos that's stuck under the bridge right there in River Road, and the debris that came down, that causing the flood in that lower area where there's no wall. And yes, the wall helped. If the wall wasn't there, God help us, what would have happened in River Road? But we know y'all don't care about River Road. You move away from the Prime Minister's dwelling because, as your friend said, you have class and you don't want to be looking down on River Road and Dabo. Right? River Road is still in the state it was when the rainfall fell from the 8th of November, muddy, full of debris. Cynthia daughter tried a cleanup thing on the weekend, it didn't work. Because you're not speaking to the people, you're not meeting with the people ordinarily, only when you need their free services, you calling on them to come out. Them all alone, no money. The ordinary man don't know money. In these hard times, with Christmas around the corner, they need to put a little stew pork on the table for their kids. Some fish, fish is $10 a pound. It's expensive to survive on this island right now. It's expensive. Where are the wardens you speak of to clean up the rivers, the ravines, after the rain came from November 8th? Where are these wardens? The rivers and the drains, the bridges. And that is what causing the excessive flooding throughout the island. And when it's flooded at the top and it comes down the mountain, it comes down the side, the banks, the waterlogged soil, of course, you're correct, without trees, with roots to hold the soil together, the slides come down. And so what we see is the heavy slides, the heavy ones, being removed, and not totally, just enough for passing of transport and vehicles and pedestrians, and then we go on and we leave that. So the rest of it, the entire island looked like a shanty town. And all of it is not as a result of bad weather. The bad weather we've experienced over the past couple of weeks. Look at this. Look at this road that I'm about to show you from Bathway to River Sally, people. Just take a look at this and tell me if this is as a result of climate change. as we speak, this is no, this road supposed to be a tourist attraction area. But we have added attraction, right? You see a few crater lakes in there now. We have new ones that we didn't know about, right? And I mean, have you guys seen the carnage? Have you seen what our pristine carnage has become? Holes in the road. The entire sidewalk now is I mean, mash up, so to speak. I can't use a better phrase, a better term, in mash up, right? You have to be careful. You better off walking in the middle of the street and a car would blow you so you could get out, go on the side. Because you can damage your feet and your ankle and your legs walking on the sidewalk, right? On the carnage. The carnage dingy and dirty. It have a bar, a long, I don't know, I'm not very good with measurements like that. Long bar that was up probably for the carnival, maybe since the 2023 carnival, it's been there. It's still there outside of property, right? Just before you meet the Renwick and Thompson building there. There's a property, it's there, it's just there. Opposite to that, the plaza. The plaza has become, I don't know how to describe it. You have drum pan, barbecue grill, covered down with strip up bag, fine bag looking material. I don't know if that's a piece of a tarpaulin or what, but it all strip up, it's covered down there. What is a barbecue grill doing on the plaza? Bun pot cooking on the side of the road, right there, as soon as you come down from H.A. Blaze Street, and old chair, old table, old dingy looking stuff. The bar on the plaza, when we brought the young ladies there for the pageant to take all their photos, and crown cocks and cigarette butts and all of that is on the plaza. It's creepy. It's the carnage, the world famous carnage. Buildings that are dilapidated, not painted proper. The ones that are not repainted after the carnival, dirty, and that has nothing to do with climate change. That has nothing to do with the rains. We are not taking care of our country, our infrastructure. By the way, Prime Minister, you spoke of the Montrouge area. Yeah, we know Montrouge is a flood. I think one politician, one MP in the South managed to get that drains to stay at a very low, right down without water, very low water or none at all. And that was MP Glenys Roberts. So it can be done, huh? It can be done. But very early in the game, Superman say he take care of the flooding in Montrouge for good. He had post up on his page. I shared some of the posts with you there. Taking care of the so don't talk about Montrouge now. Montrouge should not be flooding, but the drains. Even when we did not have rain for months, when we had that drought, that drain there was full of water. It was not drenched, right? We are not taking care of our country. Our country cannot be looked at as nice and clean and tidy anymore. It is filthy, garbage everywhere. And I really don't blame you for the garbage or your administration. Our people seem to be careless and free and doing what they want these days because it's happening from on top. Everybody doing what they want. Nobody going by the rules. What Ron said is drama to bother to give the information to the Integrity Commission that you have to renew annually. That's too much drama. and you're looking to bring him back in the cabinet of Grenada. Now let's talk NADMA. Question for NADMA. Where is your structure and your policies mandated by your laws? What policies and structure NADMA have in place for, not just for, well, they don't have for hurricanes, but we're not just talking hurricanes here or storms. We're talking flash floods. We're talking a significant amount of rains. Where were the NADMA volunteers? I know where they are. Nepotism has crippled our country. Round pegs in square holes. The new NDC NADMA has gotten rid of all the volunteers, or almost all the volunteers they met when coming into office in 2022. Once perceived NNP. I guess that whole thing started with NADMA during the NNP reign in office many years ago. And so persons in there was hired by NNP. So I guess you perceived their NNP and you removed them from the chief right down to the bottle washer. And then you place your people. And you have not replaced everyone because you can't. You know why? NDC breed lazy people. They are a bunch of lazy people, has always been. Imagine Cinti Daughter, as I said, called out people to come and help and couldn't get. Thank God for the Rastafarians. I don't know if it's the Nyabingi or the 12th tribe, but thank God for those Rastafarians who came out to give a little hand, You get the treatment you give, you get it right back at you. So if you look there, that it wasn't enough people to clean and maybe trucks to remove the dirt and the debris they took from the drains, they put it at the bank. I guess Cinti Daughter was supposed to get trucks or whatever to help remove me. She couldn't come up with that either. But it remained there. And the rain fell. If you look on the screen, you see the rain falling, and that is River Road. And the muddy stuff, the silt on the top of the roadside is being washed away again back into the drains. So in other words, we're spinning top in mud. But that's the norm for NDC, really. That's the norm for NDC. Where are the environmental wardens and the best workers? Don't try that, I hear you call them the Bush's prime minister in your press briefing. Don't try that. They're best. You said loud and clear that from now on, and that was in 2022, in October of 2022, or November of 2022, that they would know from now on, they'll no longer be called the Bushes. They would be called the best workers, right? You gave them the name. You said it. Let's hear you. Lest we forget.
Mr. Speaker, I turn to the BEST program: beautification, empowerment, sustainability, and transformation. Mr. Speaker, this project involves the rebranding and rescoping of the road rehabilitation program, more commonly referred to as the bushing program. And henceforth it will be known as the BEST program. The program will focus on more environmentally sustainable practices and a training component to empower our individuals. And I alluded to that earlier, Mr. Speaker, by talking about the fact that we will use the grass and so on that is cut as part of our national composting program. A sum of $8 million is budgeted for this program next year.
And he's proud. He said it with a smile. And table knock and crowd roar. Where are the people in the best program? They need money. Give them the work. There were allocations in the supplementary budget for cleaning up. The minister of MIT said he has money in his budget for cleaning up. You know he holding the bag of money. Give the best workers, give them the job, give the environmental wardens, give them the job to clean the roadways, the drains, the rivers, the ravines. Give them the job. The big logs and the bamboos the river brought down, that's stuck under the bridges and across the rivers and the ravines. Give them the job to remove it, or else the water will wash us all away eventually. It will. Because it's just, if you notice it's getting worse. But you don't have time to stop long enough to notice nationwide. You know, you see St. David's, you film your movie, and you're gone. Who is in charge? We have to stop blaming climate change, trust me. It's obvious the head of NADMA and whoever else is involved is clueless and probably downright lazy, just like their leaders are. Now, in that same press conference, the coordinator of NADMA, the man in charge, Dr. Terence Waters, was asked about NADMA being a statutory board and the laws and stuff about NADMA. And the Prime Minister was asked about how he feels about how NADMA came through for us over the past few days, you know. The Prime Minister, of course, took the entire both questions, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, my question is to Mr. Walters. Now, SRO 40 of 2023, which was passed in October, commenced the new NADMA Act, the Disaster Management Act, which makes NADMA into a statutory body. Can Mr. Walters tell us who are the members of his board? What was the budget given to NADMA in the 2024 budget? And my final question to is to the Prime Minister. Is he satisfied with the response NADMA has given to the nation since the November 8 rain?
Thank you, Ms. Strick. And I'll answer the question in relation to the statutorization of NADMA, because that's really not for Mr. Walters per se, but for the government of Grenada. So yes, the legislation was enacted. NADMA was not given a budget in the 2024 budget, because although the legislation was enacted, the actual operationalizing of NADMA into a statutory body has not in fact commenced. We are hoping to do so in the 2025 budget cycle, so there is no board of NADMA as we speak now. And if you would recall from, and that should have been probably self-evident from our experience at Hurricane Beryl, because what we would have had was the National Emergency Advisory Council, which was the sort of policy framework set up pre the enacting of the legislation to turn NADMA into a statutory body. And so that's the framework in terms of practical operationalizing of NADMA that has occurred. It is still operating as a department of the Ministry of National Disaster in conjunction with the wider National Emergency Advisory Council, which is a representative body of almost every sector in Grenada, from power to water to airports to port to infrastructure to health, which was the process by which we managed Hurricane Beryl. Given that NADMA itself has no separate budget and has no separate board as yet, its ability to treat with disaster response at this point in time is to some extent quite limited, and it must depend to a large extent on the entire government and the entire public to be able to operationalize responses to disasters of all kinds. What NADMA has been doing
I'm saying NOASA a lot because I guess NOASA has dominated the conversation. What NADMA has been focused on primarily is making sure that from an education and a pre-briefing and a notification perspective, that it does everything to inform the public of impending climatic conditions once it is advised by the Meteorological Office and the necessary actions and steps that are required to be able to do so. I certainly think NADMA's handling and response of Hurricane Beryl in all of the circumstances and given the limitations I've just identified was, in my view, quite excellent. Of course, there are areas that, as it moves into a statutory body, we will have to significantly address. In terms of this particular response, I certainly have heard the criticisms as to whether or not NADMA could not have given a clearer warning as to the possibility of the flash floods and the amount of rainfall. In hindsight, we can perhaps say yes, but the truth about rainfall in particular, it's always highly unpredictable. And we've had experiences where the sun is shining hot in St. George's and St. Patrick is being washed out. So it's not always easy to be able to predict with certainty how the weather will behave. I would probably say that from a information perspective, that we would obviously review the internal approach to how we disseminate and to the extent to which we scale up to say this is urgent or not urgent. But we also have to appreciate that when we tell people no school or we say there's going to be flash flooding and it doesn't happen, then people turn around and criticize and say you shut down the country or you do this or you make everybody run scared and then nothing happens. So it's always a balancing act. So there's no question that I think on the communication side, we will have to relook how we communicate and to make sure that we use all available tools, including our telecoms providers or radio stations, social media and so on, to make sure that we can hopefully be as accurate as the Meteorological Office would allow us to be in terms of giving warnings of possible adverse weather conditions.
It is time the people call a no confidence motion against this administration. We know the opposition do not have the enough. They can call it too. We know nothing going to happen, but we have to make a point. We have to let you all know that we are fed up and that you all are not capable. You all are incompetent and inept. And it must go on record. It must go on record. You all have been given that free paper for too long now. We are calling on the opposition. Simon Says is calling on the opposition to get their act together. I do believe that with the naming of the date for the convention is a start. So let's see what happens thereafter. And I'll be back. So I give you that couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Have your convention. Let's see what comes out of it and what happens next. I'll be back. But we need to get this administration out of office. I ain't asking for them to pull up. They can't pull up. There's no return for these people. This raffle we took a chance in is a scam. It's what we call a Ponzi scheme. It's a fraud. This is a whole country they're playing with. A whole country you're playing cuckoo with. Our livelihood, people's lives, you're taking chance with. You're still taking a chance. We gave you a chance. You asked for a chance and it was given to you. You got 2.5 years to try and buck up. Nothing doing. In fact, it's getting worse. We have ministers of government and MPs totally missing in action. Look at the roads in St. Patrick there. We have 2 ministers in St. Patrick. The Minister of Finance, that's his constituency. Come on now. Grenada, wake up. It's evening time. And we still down below the house playing kukute. When it starts to get dark, it's time to wake up and get up and go upstairs. Day and night, we down below the house playing kukute. I've had enough. I don't know about you guys, but I've had enough. And you know, with information coming to me so often, daily, hourly sometimes, no matter where I'm at, what I'm doing. Huh? Hey, the drones, my friends, they're there, you know, they've been, no, not now, but they're still there. Every evening they come out. Imagine which night it was, last night or the night before. It rained some, not heavily, and so they're out there. Last night they were there in abundance. I counted probably about 5, like the very first night. Most times now it's about 3, but 5 or 6 was out last night in abundance. I don't know what they're looking for. There's this huge one that comes and sits in the center every night. And then there are a few little ones around and too. But this particular one, every night. Yeah. So you'd have to follow me around all day and all night to find out who's giving me information, where I'm getting it from. You have to bug my clothes. I don't know what, because the drone thing ain't working. If I have a visitor, who cares? It ain't working. So the persons you all have out there in the night, all night, I'm sorry for it because you'll have a long time to wait out there. Folks, is it true the Lottery Authority brought 3 brand new vehicles, 2 for the Lottery Authority and 1 for Catwill Stationery of Mr. William Batiste? Is it true the managing director of the NLA, Ms. Cindy Henry, the lover of Mr. William Batiste, the chairman of the same NLA, collects his salary of $16,000 a month, a $7,000 raise from the immediate former managing director, who got $9,000? And is it true that, in fact, Ms. Henry is really getting $9,000 and that the $7,000 extra she's collecting on behalf of her boyfriend, Mr. William Batiste, a way of giving him a salary, because a chairman don't get a salary, but he's a buddy of the Prime Minister. Folks, what is Ms. Naleen Ramdeen Joseph, who was hired as the marketing consultant of the National Lottery Authority and a friend of the Prime Minister, who attended the Saturday meetings, has resigned her position? She is a lady of integrity. Is it true the brother of Minister Joseph Adam Andel, who campaigned against him in 2013 and 18 on the NNP platform with Tonton, saying all manner of things about Mr. Joseph Andel? He beat up his wife, he had her locked up in room, and da 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 da. Was it true or was it false? But Mr. Adam Andel is now, or was on his brother's platform, because he was fired for corruption and wrongdoings under the NNP. Wood for wood, all kind of thing. Had car car rental, self-drives, and lots of businesses. Huh? Eventually was on the run when the NNP fired him for corruption. Is now in the hearts of the NDC. Hired, brought in through the back door, and is now conducting the same behavior under the NDC. Folks, this is sad, you know. I was there. I remember him coming and complain about what Adam did and what Adam said. And what Adam's doing. And Adam built a road right up to his father's house where Adam's living. And Adam house had how much windows? I think they say about 50 or 100. The windows for the community was there in the Adam house. Folks, this thing had to stop. When will it end? Question to the Prime Minister. Whatever happened to the 7 memorandums signed with Cuba when you headed a huge delegation to visit Cuba in April of this year, 2024? And is it true, Prime Minister, the solar lights going up around the island through Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique, the ones with the white poles with the blue base, is it true these solar lights are purchased by the government of Grenada for all government properties and along our roadways? Is it true those lights are brought in by a bestie of yours, Prime Minister, to be sold to the government of Grenada? This bestie, maybe it's bestie is true, of yours sells car parts. Is it true he's also the chairman of the Spice Mass Corporation, SMC? And even though he's ineffective, remains as the chairman of the SMC board. Prime Minister, we await the investigation of and the corruption of the National Lottery Authority between the chairman of the board, Mr. William Batiste, and his lover, the managing director of the authority, Ms. Cindy Henry. Prime Minister, please investigate the bribery that took place between your minister for MIT, Minister Andy Williams, and the contractor for the Cliff Road project, $115,000, $100,000 in cash, and $15,000 in kind to renovate a vehicle belonging to Minister Andy Williams. Folks, I want to share with you why the Prime Minister refused to address the matter of corruption and conflict of interest within his cabinet and statutory bodies and the ministry on a whole, his administration on a whole. In an interview, compliments WPG 10, when asked about the corruption and the conflict of interest, this is what the Prime Minister had to say.
Well, first, let's talk a little bit about conflict of interest. There's been a lot of concern. You hear people talking a lot, and not just the people who are trying to get your job and have too much time on their hands, but there's concern about conflict of interest, people being involved with the government and the party, but still being involved in certain activities and businesses that are paid for by the state. That people feel there's whether it's improper or not, but there's still that specter of impropriety. The opposition would call it corruption in some cases.
The opposition talks about corruption?
Well,
I hope my cameraman is getting your face. This is priceless. I know. But the opposition would would say at worst is corruption, at best is conflict of interest. Whether or not there is that situation, does it worry you at all that there's concerns? Are you hearing about these things, or what I'm saying here to you is just?
Well, it's new stuff. It's news to me. So unless there are very specific examples that we need to address, I can do so. But I will say this because I think in a small society, you always have to manage conflict of interest. Conflict of interest will always arise. And that's why whether it's in corporations or even in the public sector, you have to be able to see how do you treat the conflicts of interest. And I'll take a simple example. If you read a lot of our statutory bodies and the legislation that establishes them, you would see, in fact, they address conflict of interest. So, for example, most of the people who serve on statutory bodies in Grenada are volunteering their time. They get paid $300 and $500. They're essentially serving the public because we asked them to help. And you recall in our case, we actually made a call for all kinds of Grenadians to step up and help serve. So, for example, if I have my private business, let's say I'm an accountant, and you ask me to serve on a statutory body, and I'm essentially volunteering my time. And that statutory body puts out an expression of interest for accountants because they need someone to audit their books or someone to provide accounting services, for example. Now, you may say, because I'm a director of the statutory body, that my firm should not bid. But it's a small place. The number of businesses are limited. And my firm, I may be one of the partners in the firm, and the firm may bid. The legislation actually contemplates that. So it says that as a director, if the board then has to decide who to award this contract when you have 4 or 5 competing firms, you, the director, need to declare your interests in the fact that your firm has made a bid to provide accounting services. You need to declare your interests, and oftentimes you need to recuse yourself from any decision making that the board may make. Because it recognizes that you will end up in a situation where you either will never get private sector people who are offering services of various kinds to so on statutory bodies, because they will say, I have a decision to make. Do I help serve the public by providing my own time, my own skill set, my own expertise, or do I only serve my business and stay in the private sector, make bids to get work and make money? So most of these statutory bodies actually recognize that. It tells you that in those circumstances, you should declare your interest and you should recuse yourself. It will depend, in a sense, on the firm's particular culture. Some firms may say, you know what, I don't need any of this drama. I have enough clients in the private sector. I don't need government work. I don't need no statutory body work. So I can just work on only private sector business. And so the director who comes from my firm may not have a problem at all because his firm therefore never ever attempts to get government business. But not many firms can afford to do that. I'll use myself as an example. My firms, when I worked at Grant and Joseph and when I worked at Mitchell & Co., generally never worked for the government. We were probably persona non grata. We know we'd probably never get any government work except one statutory body, which is the Airports Authority. And I'm giving you real examples here. So when I talk about who want to talk about corruption, when I got involved with the National Democratic Congress and became political leader, remember, the NEC is not in government, it's not even in parliament. Within 1 week of that happening, we got an unceremonious letter from the Airports Authority telling us we've been sacked, fired. No complaints about performance, no complaints about the excellent legal services we've been providing to them. In fact, we're sacked, and we know why. Because I'm now the leader of the National Democratic Congress. And so we promptly returned all the files, etc., etc., etc. Right. Now, my firm, to a large extent, I'm the Prime Minister. The government needs legal services all over the place. My firm position is probably, we ain't need the hassle of dealing with no government and no statutory body and to have people make things. So they don't even bid, for the most part, on government work. So I'm saying the Grenadians who work there and who pay taxes just like everybody else, just to avoid any drama, effectively are, in a sense, handicapping themselves from growth, from economic development, simply because I'm the Prime Minister. Contrast that. I want you to contrast that with the history of some other law firms and the roles their partners and so on played in past administration, and ask yourself whether they took the neat decision that we don't need the government work, or whether all the government work went to them. So when I say there's some people who have no moral authority to talk about some of those things, I think in many instances they're fortunate, given the kind of disrepute that they brought Grenada in over the several years, decades in many instances, that they even alive and live peacefully and nobody bothers with them about the kind of levels of corruption and so on that is taking place in this country. So I don't know that, what is it? Pot telling kettle black.
They're fortunate that they're even alive, he said. I'll leave that one right there. Today, the Prime Minister's answer to corruption is pot calling kettle black. So, Prime Minister, you are admitting that there is corruption within your administration. It's just that not only in yours, you say, pot calling kettle black. So there was corruption before within the former administration. Although we have seen kettles, I have seen kettles that are much blacker than pots in some instances. It all depends on the flame beneath the kettle. So you've given legs to the phrase, the more things change, the more they remain the same. What I can say, Prime Minister, is that the former administration, within the last decade in office, made a special effort to do proper due diligence to curtail the corruption that occurred mostly within the CBI's, within or with CBI scammers. That's where the blatant corruption was. Like E.J. Miller, in the Manhattan saga, we all know it. Well, at least I do. And that you all keep bringing back and going way back down the road. E.J. Miller, Van Brink, Charles Liu, Ristiner, all of the above. We know they were CBI scammers. Van Brink was, I think, First Bank, was with the First Bank thing. We know about the shrimp farm and the fall farm, and not a brick was laid and not an egg was laid, and we know all of those. But never have we as a nation encountered our local politicians sitting in our cabinet, sitting in our ministries as technocrats, being involved in so much corruption, such blatant fraudulent behavior, and the management turning a blind eye. Well, some of them are involved in it as well, in the corruption. Now, on the other hand, we voted for change. And the corruption, as I said, is within your cabinet and amongst your hired technocrats in plain sight, your friends on statutory boards, persons in the diaspora, in the NDC chapters, and the Deacon Mitchell support groups. It's everywhere within the NDC. Without fail. Every institution. Uncle Tilly, what happened? What happened? Can't you see the institutions and what's going on in there? There's corruption in the Grenada Development Bank, the National Lottery Authority, gravel and concrete, the renovating of buildings, the one on the Carnage, case in point, for the headquarters of the RGPF. This thing seemed never ending, overruns and overruns. And ministers collecting $10,000 every so often and $3,000 from the poor contractor who don't know from his elbow. And they take the money and then he don't have enough money to finish the job. Allegations of such and not a thing was done. Well, he wouldn't speak because he wouldn't tell you all, but he spoke about it out there. The Cliff Road project and the bribery that took place between one of your cabinet members, who, as a matter of fact, is our acting prime minister as I speak, and has been, was acting prime minister for more times you've been prime minister. A fraudulent guy. who exchanged money for a contract and had this same contractor purchase his house that was supposed to be in the development bank as security, as collateral for his $3 million loan that your NDC board combined and gave him, instead of turning him down, that the board, like the board before did in June, I think, of early June of 2022, same close to when, turned him down. I stand corrected with the date, but very close, right? He sold the house for $600,000, got $100,000 in his hand and his vehicle fixed in exchange for the contract on the cliff. That's another never-ending one. 2 days in, or 1 week in, 2 weeks out. The True Blue Road project, was that a continuation of the bribery? He had to get that contract as a continuation of spilling over from the cliff. And the question remains, Prime Minister, who gave the authority to remove the equipment, the piece of heavy equipment that was impounded by the police belonging to that contractor that caused the death of a young man that was not licensed nor insured? The reason for being impounded, but ended up in the streets in True Blue on the job and caused a young man his life. We ain't hearing nothing about that. We ain't hearing nothing about that. And we have turned a blind eye. And you, Prime Minister, has deemed these allegations, as you say, which some of them are not allegations. If you notice, I ain't using the word allegation. Come. Don't let me put the facts out there, the actual facts out there of the $100,000. All in good time. All in good time. You are saying that these allegations that you have to investigate, because you don't believe it, so for you it's allegations, are not credible. There are members of your technocrat team, advisor, buying lands through a Grenada as fish cake, Mr. Burke. Lands buying out as fish cake. Nationwide, and boasting of it in the doubles breakfast line on a morning. What he said, money is not a problem. And I buy this piece here, and I'm going after that piece there, and all you have lands up here for sale. Everywhere you go, all you have lands there for sale. And do you believe that GIS have 2.5 mics? That they ended up with one mic passing as if it's spliff, ganja. You know, your turn, take a spliff, take a pull. Mics passing. In this 2024, well, we're almost in 2025. I don't think that's fair. Our country, are they exposed? Prime Minister, in this case, the kettle is definitely blacker than the pot. When asked further about the corruption within his cabinet and his administration, this is what he had to say.
Would things like that worry you in terms of the optics politically? I mean,
No, I think
you
we
know,
are as transparent.
you know, there are a bunch of people now with too much time on their hands trying to get their job back because of corruption issues.
We are as transparent a government, I think, as Gray has seen in my lifetime, for sure. And I think if any issues arises and there's credible evidence of stuff, as a Prime Minister, I'm prepared to deal with it. But what I will not...
Did you look into the lotto matter, though?
Yes, I looked at...
Because I looked into it, and there seemed to have been a bit of credibility to some of the issues.
I looked into the issue, and I just said to you, which is why I talked about how you handle conflicts in terms of what the legislation says and what has to happen, right? So I'm saying when people just simply make spurious allegations and come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff, you have to be careful that you don't allow people to draw you in and to make decisions as if you are Jesus Christ and he who is without sin cast the first stone. I'm saying the very nature of our laws recognize that you have situations where someone who serves on a board may have their firm or their business and so on bidding for work that a particular entity is offering. And there's a process and procedure that has to be followed. So I'm saying if someone makes, and you're saying it, do I look into the lotto thing simply because I'm hearing media allegations, if someone makes a credible accusation, we will obviously investigate it and then we make necessary decisions that has to be made. But too often, and I think the National Democratic Congress government in the past was allowed itself to be hoodwinked into trying to go after its own and into trying to punish its own and to hold itself at that standard that's almost impossible. When other people are doing all kind of things left, right, and center and getting away with it. So I'm saying we are living in a society where nobody's perfect. And we have to be careful that we don't try and hold people in public office to a perfect standard and then try to hold them at that.
Hoodwinked, Prime Minister? Prime Minister, integrity is almost impossible. Folks, hoodwinked means to deceive or trick someone. But you fired Minister Jonathan Lacrette, Prime Minister, and saved your friend, William Batiste. Are you saying, Prime Minister, that former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas was hoodwinked when he fired Minister Joe Gilbert, demoted Michael Church, and fired Attorney General Jimmy Bristol, whom, by the way, not one of them was involved in corruption? None of them. They were fired for different reasons, but not corruption. You have it staring you in the face, and it's as if you're doing it for spite. You're leaving us with one of the most crooked person on this island as your ministry, in your cabinet, your minister of MIT. Each time, almost every time, as Prime Minister of Grenada, we don't have no shame. We have no shame. Prime Minister, are you saying that an attempt is made to hoodwink you concerning the ministry of MIT, or the minister, sorry, of MIT, taking a bribe in exchange for a contract? The Clift project, to be exact, which goes back to the GDB, giving this man a $3 million loan, totaling a $3 million loan. So is that why Ron Redhead was allowed to sell a car? Him and his advisor, Ian Django Thomas, who was paid by the National Lottery Authority to hide that. Because everybody in Grenada who know Django know he can't be no advisor. And that our hard-earned monies, taxpayers' monies, would not be or should not be paying him $5,000 a month as advisor to Ron Redhead. They're partners in crime. That's it. Exactly. That's it. Right? So hiding in the lottery authority, paying him. They sold a vehicle that was loaned to Ron Redhead during his campaign for campaign purposes. And instead of returning the vehicle, he said he wants to purchase the vehicle after the elections. The owner gave him a quotation of $18,000. Him and his advisor, that's Ron Reddit and Ian Django Thomas, decided to sell the vehicle without the knowledge of the owner and sold it for $10,000. She only found out when the person who purchased the vehicle was searching and trying to find her to do the transfer. That's when she knew her vehicle was sold. Well, of course, talk break. Everybody talking about it. The Prime Minister, on hearing it, yes, you, Prime Minister, called the owner of the vehicle to find out if it's true. Yes, it was credible information. Ron and Django sold a vehicle that did not belong to them. I don't know if they didn't know about it. Well, Django must know. Django was involved in all kind of thing with carting. That the vehicle, you had to transfer it. And they cannot transfer it because they don't own it. Right? So the Prime Minister called and she said, yes, it's true. And the Prime Minister promised that, and that was a Sunday when the news broke. By Monday, you're going to get certain amount. I think it was 10,000. And the following, by Wednesday, for sure, you'd get the balance. Question to the Prime Minister. Did you give Ron Reddit the cash, $18,000, to pay off Miss McQueen for her car that Ron and Django sold for $10,000? All this corruption because Grenada is too small to accommodate the high standards, and no one is perfect. Folks, God is alive. Do you still believe that that's all climate change destroying Grenada? Don't get me wrong. I do believe there's climate change, but I also believe there's a God. Prime Minister and Minister of Infrastructure, can you please give an update on the H.A. Blaze Street roadworks and the Cliff project? What is really going on the cliff? Is it true, because of the court judgment against the contractor, the judge ruled that the gain matter, that it was always the intention of both brothers to form a company and run it to the benefit of them both. Therefore, the claim by the contractor of the Cliff project, CCCI, Nelson Lewison, that the company belongs to him only, is illegal, and that the company must be wound up by a liquidator, and the proceeds of the sale of the assets be shared among both brothers. However, it is true that GAIN was the support company for CCCC, the backbone of the CCCI, the spine of the company that got the loans and so to do the projects. You put your money up front and yeah. While you're at it, Prime Minister, please assure the nation that all is, or maybe the acting Prime Minister, that all is well with the Molineux Road project. If you see their clips, their photos there showing signs of land slippage behind the project. I don't know, in front, maybe behind. I don't know if it's the front or the back. The question remains, Prime Minister, who authorized the release of the impounded vehicle to the contractor of the True Blue Road project that had no license and insurance, that caused the untimely death of a young man from St. Patrick's. Whatever happened to the $200,000 raised by Adam DeCall of Call's Food Stores on a GoFundMe for the people of Petite Martinique to reconstruct their clinic and school after the passing of Beryl? And I want to repeat, the people of Petite Martinique to reconstruct their clinic and their school after the passing of Beryl. In a press conference, Adam DeCall handed over a check to the Minister of Finance, Dennis Cornwall, in the presence of the Prime Minister and Minister Lennox Andrew, a $200,000 check. Here's Mr. Adam DeCall.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, distinguished guests, and all present today. I'm Adam DeCall, manager of Call's Food Stores, and I'm here to donate the funds for the rebuilding efforts of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. The story behind this fund is one of transformation of helplessness into hope. It originated from my own feelings of helplessness when Hurricane Beryl approached the island. I happened to be away on holiday. I know many other persons who weren't on the island would have felt the same helplessness, unable to physically help prior, during, and after the hurricane. In the moment of feeling helpless while I was away after the hurricane, a thought came to me to collect funds, build a fund, do what you can. I followed this thought and started a GoFundMe page trying to raise $35,000, which at the time I thought was ludicrous. How would we ever earn that much funds? But however, due to the generosity of people donating and sharing, we have now raised $200,000 plus, reflected in the check, which I'll hand over shortly. This fund was always intended for rebuilding efforts. After visiting our sister islands, I pledged these funds for the rebuilding of the health clinic and the school in Petite Martinique. There can be nothing more important than the health and education of the people, and rebuilding these facilities will have a significant impact on the island. I am fully committed to ensuring these structures are rebuilt better and stronger, so they may even serve as shelters in future hurricanes. The clinic, as residents have shared, has lost its roof a few times, and I want to ensure that this time is the last time. I want to say the Minister of Health, Mr. Telesford, contacted me this morning saying the same exact things to me, and that his goal is to see that the building is built back stronger, better, and greener.
You've heard him. He said he's the manager, and I want you to listen to me carefully, and you'd know why shortly. He's the manager of Call's, no D in it, no D-Call, Call's Food Stores. He also said, and you've heard him, the check is for the rebuilding of the health clinic and the school in Petite Martinique. Then Mr. Cornwall got up to thank Mr. Adam DeCall as if he had just woke up, come out of his slumber, stood and thanked Adam DeCall and said it all wrong. He collected the check to build the health clinic in Carriacou. The press secretary, in her usual summary of persons, announced the check was for the clinic in Carriacou and the school in Petite Martinique. Right there and then, in front of the man, he just don't tell them the check is for Petite Martinique, the health clinic, and the school in Petite Martinique. To date, neither the school for the health clinic or the health clinic, rather, in Petite Martinique have been rebuilt or even started. Somewhere we're trying to figure out where the check is right now. Let's hear what Minister Cornwall had to say on receiving the $200,000 check for Petite Martinique.
On behalf of the Government of Grenada, I am pleased to accept this check of 200,000 plus from the Cause Foodstuff Limited, a company in Grenada that has gone out and raised funds to build facilities on Carriacou, especially the medical station in Carriacou. And I think that is a very good gesture. I'll also encourage other companies to come on board to make sure that we can build back Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique in a stronger and better way. Thank you, everyone.
So Minister Cornwall got up and received a check from the Cause Foodstuff Limited and to go towards the rebuilding of the Carriacou Clinic. Right there, not days later, seconds later. Because as soon as Mr. Adam Nicol was done with his presentation, Minister Cornwall got up seconds later, said totally wrong thing, wrong. And to date, we have no idea where the $200,000 is. We know that the clinic in Carriacou was fixed back, and the one in Petit Martinique is still waiting. But sitting at that table was also Minister Lennox Andrew, who's the Minister of Agriculture, and in a press briefing a couple months ago, when asked about the funding for the farmers from CREF and the funding for the fisher folks from Coast, where are these monies? Are they going to be used to help these people? This is what he had to say.
My question for the Minister for Agriculture is actually linked to what the Minister of Finance would have said. The Minister of Agriculture mentioned $11.6 million that will be distributed, utilized to the average farmer or the fisher folks. Can he tell us whether or not the money for the fisher folk is from the CREF course funding premium that we have? And would, if the money for the agricultural people, is this from the CREF funding or the emergency funding and Section 22 of the Public Management Act? And when will government be going to the Parliament to get the necessary approval to supplementary budget?
All right, thank you, Linda, for your question. But actually, the best person to answer that is the Minister of Finance, not the Minister of Agriculture. Anytime you talk about money, you have to go to the Minister of Finance, But be that as it may, first of all, let me say, all expenditure comes from what is referred to as the consolidated fund. So whatever money government gets, it goes into the treasury. It's the part of the consolidated fund, and expenditures are made out of that fund. In government, we do not earmark resources. So we do not say, for example, that a particular source of income goes for a particular expenditure. That doesn't happen. Obviously, under the CRIF payout, some monies were for the fishing industry. Good. So theoretically, it would seem that those money have to be used for that purpose, but it is not correct, in my opinion, to say that money is specifically used for the fishing. It's all part of the consolidated fund, and from there we have monies that we can use for whatever expenditure government needs to incur. We have prepared a supplementary estimate, good, and my understanding is that I think sometime in September, Minister of Finance, sometime in September we'll go towards Parliament for the approval of the supplementary estimates, which include all of those expenditures that I would have announced for the agricultural sector.
No, Minister. The cost money, the policy, the insurance received from that is for the fisher folks. All know they ball in. All they take the money and do what? It's for the fisher folks, the coast policy, right? Now, this is a gentleman, he don't even remember what is the supplementary estimates, that worked in the Ministry of Finance, that was one time acting permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, that was before he became Minister of Agriculture. Now I can understand ICT and different things like that. This gentleman here who say that the money would go in the consolidated fund and spend how they want. No wonder why we're in the mess we are in today. And we can't find money for what is for what and nothing. We're just doing things. Peck-a-mel, you call that. Peck-a-mel, you call that. Eh? Question. How come the floods and the landslides is responsible for the postponement of the payment to the seeds beneficiary, the landslides? I don't understand that part. In my mind, I'm thinking maybe the money was buried underground somewhere and the landslide went down and it went with the money and we're searching for the money. Because I don't know, nothing wrong with the inland revenue. Why do we have to postpone the payment because of landslides? I mean, what next? So this time it was saved by burial, now it's saved by the landslides. They're getting a little, seem to be getting a little opening, a little crack to squeeze through every time. Every time. It will come to an end. It must. Is it true there are members of the cabinet of Grenada who owns security firms, trumped up ones, to eat the food? I have the names. I'll call it. Not today. Not today. But in an effort to eat the food, all kind of businesses was registered. And they have no shame, you know. They've been telling the surrogates that people go register a business and come. And we have even ministers of government in cabinet, allegedly so, that eating the food. But we can't beat Uncle Tilly for saying for just summing it up nicely.
You must have some values and standard too. So many people in Grenada is eating food. They got poison just now.
Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you, keeping them honest. Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye now. Stay safe, stay dry.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.